Why does your life feel so boring? Okay, here's the deal. Let's be honest. We've all been there. You know, those experiences where we just feel stuck in a loop. Everything just feels flat and uninspiring. We go from week to week, month to month, just doing the same thing. And not that anything's gone wrong, it just feels a bit nah. And here's the good news, I don't think that our lives have to be like that. So in this video, I'm going to break down the 2 reasons I think that causes our life to be dull and boring. And I'm going to give you loads of actionable strategies of what you can do just to add a bit more spark, a bit more joy into your life. All right, let's dive in. If you're new to the channel, my name's Derek, and I've been supporting and helping people grow in their faith for the last 3 decades. And in these videos, I give you tools and techniques to help you live a deeper and a more meaningful life. Thomas Carlyle, he wrote this essay and he said, I want you to imagine that there's a cave dweller, a guy who lives in a cave. And let's imagine that he gets all the food and the water that he needs and he never leaves his cave and he lives there for years and years. He's born in the cave, he lives in the cave, he's there for decades and decades and decades. And let's imagine he gets to the age of 50 and he leaves the cave. And as he leaves the cave for the first time in his life, he sees the sun rise. Thomas Carlyle's kind of saying, can you imagine what that does to him? Can you imagine how that would just blow his mind? Could you imagine that sense of awe and wonder as he sees it rises? But when you see it rise every day, often it's just like, yeah, there's a sunrise. That when things become routine, it dulls our sense of wonder. That our sense of the sacred about life disappears because of routine. And the problem one, why life can get dull, is we just don't see what is. I remember when my daughter was born, Emma, she was born by section, and so when she was first born, that she was given to me, and I was took into a different room by why her mom had surgery just to kind of repair her and heal her and that sort of stuff. And so for the first 30 minutes of Emma's life, there was me and her in this side room somewhere. There was nobody else there. Her mum wasn't there. There was no medical staff. There was just me and her. And I just talked to her for that time. And I just looked at her. And it was just the most amazing 30 minutes. And actually, Emma, she's 20 now. She's just gone from work and she's just gone past that window there. Don't know if you can see her. She's just kind of gone. And it's like, yeah, there's Emma, she's gone to work, it's kind of ordinary, that's it. And I did have special moments with her, but actually the first time is really special, and then it can just become a bit more ordinary, and the wonder can just disappear a little bit. I remember when Tom, my son, he was about 2, 3, he was kind of at the toddler age, and he was the age where if he wanted to walk, because he was big enough to walk, but it would take him ages to get anywhere. Not because he was a slow walker, but I can remember he was on his reins and he just wants to stop and look at everything. He's like, no, that's just a stick, Tom, and that's a plastic ball, and that's it. You don't want to touch that, Tom. And it'd be like really frustrating because you want to get somewhere and he doesn't want to be in a pram because he wants to start walking. But if he walks, it takes ages and you're always trying to hurry him on. And I remember one day I was like, you know what I'm going to do? I didn't have much to do. And I said, we're going to go to the shop. I'm going to do an experiment. I'm going to walk at the pace of Tom. All right, we don't need to be anywhere quick. So rather than rushing on, I'm just going to see how long it takes him to get anywhere. And so we're walking along, and I can remember he stops at this thing, so we wait, he picks something up, he looks and he toddles and he wanders. And I remember we got to this tree in the pavement, you know, like when a tree and all the pavements around it and all the roots are sticking up. And we got to it, and he just crept down and he looked at all these roots and he's touching them and he's talking and he's looking. And inside I feel this frustration, like, come on, let's get to the shop. What are we looking at? It's just a tree. And I remember, what is it that Tom's seeing that I'm not? I mean, if that was the first tree I'd ever seen, I'd probably be amazed by it, wouldn't I? And so on that walk, I tried to stop and I tried to see what Tom was seeing. And partly that's really one of the ways that we break through the boredom, that actually there's a lots around us that's going to be routine that we've seen, but can we see it as if for the first time? Can we deliberate attention to seeing the wonder? There's a verse in Philippians 4 verse 8 where Paul's writing to the church, and this verse means lots of things, but actually this is what he says. He said, whatever is noble and whatever is lovely and whatever is excellent and whatever is admirable, and he goes this big list, He said, I want you to think about those things, whatever's noble and admirable and lovely, and I want you to direct your attention to those things. And it's almost like this idea that we just get into the humdrum and the norm, and we don't see what's really there. It's just part of the norm. And I think one of the ways we break through and we get a sense of the sacredness in life is we deliberately direct our attention to see what is. And can do this in lots of ways, but it needs to be deliberate and it needs to be almost regular to sharpen our spiritual senses. And so let me throw out a few examples about how I've tried to do this that have worked for me. And so one of the things you might want to do is, as you go to bed, as you lie in bed, maybe sitting on a chair before you go to bed, or just as you're lying, you're about to go to sleep, is replay your day almost like a videotape and look for the magic. Right, remember when you got yourself up and what you ate and who you chatted to, and look for the magic during the day. And the magic might have been just the way somebody smiled, or just the funny comment somebody said, or you might have just had something really good to eat, or something else happened that you just didn't notice at the time, but you just look for the magic in the day. And if you do this every day, what I've found is when you do that every day over weeks and months, actually what starts to happen is you don't see the magic at the end of the day. You start to train your spiritual senses to see the magic in the day, and the sense of sacredness comes back in. Or another way of doing this is walking. I think building walks into your routine, particularly if you haven't got any devices with you or you're not listening to stuff, you're just walking and letting your mind wander, that you direct your mind towards looking at whatever is admirable and lovely. And that might be what you see around or just in your memory, but you direct your attention. There's something about walking, I think, that's good for the soul. Or writing is another way, maybe once a week. What I do is a review once a week, and I'll just scan through my week, and partly that's my own development of setting goals, etc. But part of it is just like looking for the wins and looking for the goodness in the week. And sometimes writing is a good way to help us to focus our mind and attention. But you'd have to do any of that. But I think that unless we have deliberate practices, deliberate intention, where we look at whatever's admirable and lovely and noble, unless we direct our attention, we're going to miss the wonder that's all around our lives, and our lives are just going to stay dull and a little bit meh. And the second reason that our lives can feel so boring is because they are. That our lives have become boring. All right, that there's all sorts of institutions and systems around us that are designed to make our lives really boring, so that we'll consume stuff, so we'll buy stuff, so we'll watch stuff. That our attention economy, that we just got to watch Netflix, we've got to surf the internet, we've got to give our time to social media. But actually that's just like really, really dull way to spend our existence. There's a verse in John 10:10 where Jesus is speaking and he's saying to people, listen, the reason I've come is so that you might have life. An abundance of life. He's talking about the equality of life. He talks about eternal life, life that goes on ever, but it's also about our experience of life. And when you read through the story of Jesus' interaction with people, you can't help but imagine that really what Jesus is inviting people to is an adventure. He doesn't invite them to monotony and dullness. He's inviting them to adventure. And it's so easy for life to dull us into the mundane. And one of the ways to stop our lives get boring is we say yes to more adventures. We create adventures and we set ourselves up for that. I was reading a story recently. It was in Ali Abdul's Feel Good Productivity, I think it was, and he was talking about a guy who was trying to spice up his work because his work was so dull. He was working in fast food chain, I think it was McDonald's or Burger King, and he was finding it so boring that he decided to set up an adventure for himself for every day. And what he used to do is he'd pick one of the sauces, like mayonnaise or barbecue or whatever, and he'd say to himself, that's the sauce of the day. My ambition is to see how many of those I can sell today. And he would just make it a whole fun challenge that nobody else knew he was playing it, but he was doing it. And so people order fries and he'd be like, oh, do you know the barbecue is the special sauce for the day? And they're like, no thanks. And he's like, oh, I really think if you have this barbecue. And he'd come up with funny things to say to kind of encourage them and spice up their life, as it were, with that. And he did that because his job was so boring. And I'm not suggesting that you might do that, but it's just about thinking, actually, how do we add adventure into our lives? Remember when Emma was going to primary school, and her brother Tom, he'd grown up, he was in secondary school, so I no longer walked him to school, but I was still walking Emma to school, and after school I'd pick her up and we'd have a bit of time before Tom come home. And I was thinking, like, it won't be long before she goes to secondary school and we lose a bit of contact, so how do I invest adventure into my relationship with her? And so we lived in a town with lots of coffee shops, and I said to her, why don't every week we'll go to a different coffee shop and we'll sample the drink and we'll sample the cake, and we're going to give it rating for taste. And so that's what we did every week. It would be the coffee shop adventure, and we'd taste something and we'd pick a different cake every week and we'd taste it. And it's like really, really simple, but it just added variety to our relationship, to what we're doing. You know, last year, Karen and I, my wife, we were like, we live in Manchester, UK, and we're like, actually, let's just go to as many free art galleries, museums as we can, you know, every other Saturday, every now and again, we'll go to them. And it set us a bit of an adventure of things to do, to talk about, to compare. And it's so easy just to get into a routine that we don't sample what's around us. You know, it says that in the very beginning of the Bible that God created the world and he created it good, and it encourages us to sample it and to explore it. But if we just live in the comfort zone and the ordinary, there's all God's creation around that we're not experiencing and that we're not sampling. Let me show you this, hang on. So recently I took up archery. You know, never done archery before, but I was thinking, you know what, I just want to do something a bit different, and decided to do that. And it's just sparked my brain. It's experiencing another support that God has created. And the key is not to just not do what you've already done. So I was in a meeting with some friends, some church friends last night, and we were thinking about Christmas coming up and about how we can help the community. How can we give things to the community? How can we help people? We're planning to do some interesting things. This YouTube video, I really felt God prompted me to start this, and I'm terrified. Actually, before recording this video today, I was really putting it off and really finding it difficult. And sometimes our adventures are hard work. God calls us to do things for other people, but by working with him to live in adventure, we can make a difference in other people's lives. It sometimes takes courage to not do what we're already doing, that we listen to God and he invites us into an adventure with him. And so if your life is feeling a bit dull, a bit meh, a bit boring, then set up a practice so you can see what already is there. You overcome the problem of just routine. And maybe if your life has become boring, it feels boring, it's because it is, that you might want to say yes a bit more to the adventure of Jesus, to the things that he's prompting you to do. And yes, that might take courage, but that can lead us into really exciting things. And I've come up with a list of 10 things to spice up your life, a little prompt list. And if you want to get that, then sign up in the link below and I'll send it to you. And yeah, if you want something a bit more exciting, then you might want to check out this video as well, because I think that has got some really interesting suggestions for you. And if you want to subscribe and support the channel, that would be great. But otherwise, I'll see you next time.